The Sustainability Summit is an initiative introduced with the aims of creating awareness among the young generation about renewable energy sources and the energy consumption. And also, we have the aim of
So may I cordially welcome all of you, esteemed panel, to the discussion today. So we have different areas to discuss about. So to go ahead with, we'll do it in 3 phases. In first phase, we'll have a kind of a general discussion where we all could share our opinions regarding the renewable energy and the applicability of Sri Lanka, and how it could have been implemented in our grounds. We could use that for the information and to share knowledge to the respective audience. So it is my great pleasure to welcome Mr. Ranatunga, the General Manager of Ceylon Electricity Board. We'll open up the session. Hi, Bern. We'll open up the session with you. I thought it would be nice if you could elaborate us with the facts that is coming with the local pressures with related to energy demand and all, where the renewable energy could take us, where we are today. We'll start the discussion with you with that topic.
Thank you, Dr. Palusari, for the opportunity, and welcome all of you, the panelists, which are non-friends of in our level. And in fact, Ceylon Electricity Board is the biggest utility, and there are the LECO and other utilities. And also there are many institutions, and also government has nicely set up a target to achieve the 70% of the power generation should be from renewable. Therefore, that is the biggest advantage that Sri Lanka has. Therefore, I listened to the gravity of the problem by Dr. Professor Ajitalis, a colleague of mine in the Moratuwa University, and he mentioned how grave this situation is. If the temperature is rising 1.5%, therefore we cannot reverse the climatic changes and so on. Therefore, everything is set up to absorb more and more renewable energy. But the problem is, see, we are supposed to go for lowest cost, but not for the lowest green emissions. Therefore, if the government set up rules saying that at whatever the cost, the carbon emission or the green gas emission should be much, much lower, then I think we can achieve this target much, much faster. I have seen the news very recently. The USA has started a trial run for 15 minutes, aviation, hydrogen as the aviation fuel. Therefore, by 2050, they want to do all the aviation by green hydrogen. Therefore, everything is set up and the target is there. The problem is how fast, how quick, how economical are we as Sri Lankan to achieve this target. I think I'll give the opening remarks there so that the others will contribute and maybe discuss if we have different kind of ideas. Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you, Mr. Ranatunga. So when we're talking about when Sri Lanka aspires to become carbon neutral by 2050, there are like many avenues where we could work on as general public, as academics maybe, the researchers maybe, the industry partnerships. There are lots of aspects we need to talk about. I would like to know your opinions on this, Professor Anura Wijayapala. It's a great honor to have you here today. While welcoming you, shall we go ahead in that direction?
Yeah, good afternoon to everyone. I hope everybody can hear me.
Yes, very clear.
Okay. So I have a little different thinking on this, our planning on renewable energy to solve all these issues that we are facing today. Because we have deceived ourselves a couple of times now. And in my opinion, we are deceiving ourselves, renewable energy to solve this greenhouse gas emissions issue, and also the global warming issue, and containing the temperatures to 2 degrees increase by 2100, which is, in my opinion, it's impossible. One example I would like to quote is, look at the Kyoto Protocol, which we signed in 1997 with all the optimistic hopes. And then after 15 years, 2012, we gave it up with a big failure. And now we have agreed in 2015 on Paris Agreement and having every year some conferences and commitments, but without legal binding commitments, only from a few countries, I think. All the others are nationally determined contributions and non-binding targets. I'm sure that by 2050, all these countries which have committed net zero will not achieve that. And these renewable targets on electricity production by 2030, and many will not achieve, and then there will be no action to be taken. I would like to quote from the report card or the progress report of United Nations, just issued May 2023, this month, on the this sustainable development goals, which were declared in 2015 Paris Agreement. So I quote from the progress report issued this month by United Nations. At midway point towards 2030, since 2015, it finds that many of the sustainable development goals are severely off the track, and put forward 5 major recommendations to rescue SDGs. So that means what we have committed in 2015, we have hardly achieved, and we are not seems to achieve, and that will be the final repercussion on the planet. And then maybe we will be just off the tipping point, and rescuing will be difficult. If we sing on this renewable song and coal song and continue with conferences and discussions and hopes, which we will not achieve. And in my opinion, the solution lies elsewhere. Solution lies elsewhere. I would like to quote that, in 1928, world population was 2 billion people. 1928, world population was 2 billion. And 1975, 4 billion people. And today it is 8 billion people. So you can't feed all of them with food, energy, transport, all these things with this huge population increase. So whether we like or not, I think the solution lies elsewhere, that is population control. This planet cannot bear 8 billion, which is projected to go to 10 billion, 15 billion, 20 billion by 2100. So it is impossible for the planet to hold it. And we have taken the wrong solution and trying to feed them with renewable energy and based on other food technologies and all these things, and we are deceiving ourselves. So I think, and I would like to also point out, last month, India's population crossed above China's population. India's population is now 1,428 million people, whereas the Chinese population on the same day was 1,425 million people. So just crossed. You can see the population race So if we go this untamed, I'm sure all these renewable songs we are singing today will have no future, and the planet will suffer, and we will be off the tipping point. Therefore, the only solution, as per my experience and what I predict is the population control and nothing else. And otherwise, we will destroy the planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Anura. So we are depending on finite resources and thinking about some other ways forward. And we are thinking we have to rethink and we have to reshape the way that we are going ahead. So while we are taking this discussion up, what we could do, the role and applicability of the theories that we learn, some of the stuff that we practice. So that is an important thing to talk about. So may I cordially invite Professor Asanka Rodrigo, the former Director General at Sri Lanka Sustainable Energy Authority, to have your opinion on role and applicability of renewable energy in the ground of us. What we could have done, what did we do wrong? What is your perspective on this?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. And first of all, thank you very much for inviting me for this panel discussion. I think this is very timely, important to educate young generation so that they will be the people who are taking the future of the country as well as the world. So that it's very important to give some kind of a knowledge on this aspect, so that you have already taken a very appropriate subject where to discuss and disseminate knowledge, so that if I look at the renewable energy, what will be the future in Sri Lanka. Of course, we all know that we don't at the moment we don't have any petroleum product, so that the only indigenous resource what we have is the renewable energy. So that if you look at way back, obviously we 100% depend on the renewable energy. So that gradually, as the Professor Anura mentioned, with the increase of the population as well as the increase of the demand, only we try to find out or incorporate the petroleum product to our energy usage as well as other purposes. That's how this problem arises. Now, at the moment, when you look at even for electricity, we look at the grid emission factor, we are more than the 0.5 kilograms per the kilowatt hour, the CO2 emission is there. We are planning to reduce it as much as possible, or ultimately make it the net zero. So that, as I said, in the energy sector, we don't have any other option other than looking for the renewable energy, even for the renewable, because those are indigenous. But out of those renewable energy, obviously we know that we have the hydro, the solar, wind, biomass, as well as other type of renewable energy, or which are not still in the commercial the level. But a lot of the potential is there for the solar and wind. So that what my opinion is, when we are looking at the renewable energy in Sri Lanka, obviously our hydro potentials are already exploited, or all we have used other than few the small scale mini hydro projects. But we have ample amount of the resource for the solar and wind. That's why even the country is also looking at putting more and more effort to put the solar and wind as much as possible, as well as the biomass. Because one of the key issue with the solar and wind is obviously we know that it's an intermittent resource, so that we need other technical support as much as possible. But when you look at the biomass, obviously biomass is not such kind of resource. We have again also significant amount of biomass resource also. When you look at even at the moment, if you look at our energy requirement, so the more than 40% of the energy we fulfill by the biomass. So that, but when you look at something like a 80s, so that our biomass usage for our energy requirement was something more than 80% of the total requirement. So that type of things was there, but gradually, as I said, so that we have moved into the non-renewable, and now we are again trying to move back to the renewable energy. So that obviously there is the huge capacity, and obviously we have enough resource, so that even for the solar, it is estimated that we have the more than the 35 gigawatt of energy resource. And for the wind also, the inshore, we have more than 13 gigawatt of the capacity. When we go to the offshore, that will be more than something like a 50 gigawatt of capacity, so that in terms of our requirement, we have ample resource. Only thing is how we are acting and what we are doing. So for my feeling is, now, for example, if you want to go for a renewable energy, there should be a firm policy which support, because there can be anything in the document, but the implementation is the problem. So that in our country, what I feel is, okay, we can prepare all documents, everything is on document, but the commitment in terms of the government, in terms of the public as well as the private partners, so they are committed. My things now, for example, we were talking about the large scale solar since 2014-15, and actually the Ceylon power plant was started in 2016. So now 2023, still we could not connect it to the grid. So that likewise, fortunately, there is a 100 megawatts wind project we could with the ADB funding, so we could connect it. Other than that, even though we are talking about 70% and the net carbon, the neutrality by 2050, so that what I feel is, okay, our commitments are very low, even from the government, even from the public. As the Prof. Anura said, ultimately we will end up with all whatever things in the documents, but not in practical terms. So that's why we all have to act together, act fast. Otherwise, we will not be able to. Even my point is, we will not be able to achieve our targets. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Asanka. So you brought this discussion to a very important part that we need to discuss further and to see what we can do in this regard. So when we are talking about the grid connected renewable energy sources that we have, the power generation that we have, as we have Mr. Ranatunga, so we could go ahead later. But to give the opening remarks, I would like to have the information by Mr. Vinura Jayewardene from Brandix, Group Sustainability Engineer. It's a happiness to see you here, Vinura. And can I please know, like, your opinion on like the industrial applications done by yourself or by the industrial people with regard to renewable energy and spreading this news? What can we do?
So obviously from our end, from Brandix's end, I think we have really prioritized, I think, sustainability in general from about 2007. That's really where we started. And I guess where it really started was we understood what our position was in terms of our carbon emissions. We tried to benchmark ourselves first, because back in 2007, a lot of people didn't really speak about sustainability. So we, coming from the manufacturing industry, what we first did was we actually looked at green building design. I'm happy that Professor Ajit also spoke about it. Our factory in Ceylon was actually the world's first LEED platinum rated apparel manufacturing facility. So while we did prioritize renewable energy as well, something that we did together with that was to optimize our resources, because there is no point in installing megawatts, millions and millions and millions of megawatts of solar power if your emissions are still pretty high. So what we try to do is, we try to invest in state-of-the-art technology. We try to use energy-saving mechanisms within our factories, and that to be complemented with solar power as well. And right now, in terms of our footprint, we have approximately 21 to 22 megawatts of solar power, and we hope to increase that by about 4 or 5 megawatts in the coming years, because our goal is actually to achieve net zero carbon as well, and that is by 2025 for Sri Lanka and India, and hopefully for the group by 2030. So obviously, in terms of renewable energy, the main two sources for us has been solar and biomass. So that I'll just end there, but obviously happy to share my experiences with the panel discussion to follow.
Exactly. Thank you, Vinura. So we'll get into the phase 2 of our discussion, where we all of us could come up with our options, opinions on these matters that we are talking on. Would like to, as we currently, we just few months back, we were facing all these energy related issues that has been overwhelming with the economic instability and all. So like most of us were thinking whether we could what we could do by our end. We were facing we were facing the power losses and all. So there had been a lot of pressure. There no need to mention the pressures. Over to you, Mr. Ranatunga. So would like to know what is the current status of CEB from the side of CEBs, like to resolve these matters, how we could like help up. What about the grid connected renewable energy sources that we have? Like, would like to talk about that a bit, because it will be a learning opportunity for everybody that is joined with us here today.
Yes, Doctor. In fact, the utility scale one is the easiest and the quickest one, but because of the tender procedures, the objections of the general public and various institutions, we manage only to complete the 100 megawatt of Mana wind power plant, which I have personally supervised, and I knew all the problems related to the surrounding and also the economy and ecology and everything. And I think I heard the Wijayapala PTA, the Wijayapala word is, heard over and over again. It's very sad to listen even today. It is not materialized, because I don't know whether it's a lack of interest. It is not the lack of interest, but maybe the various institutions arguing on the procedures, the way the tender is going on, or the land which could be used for some other things and so on. And also we can think of like Vinura said, the utility, we can forget about at the moment the utility scale one. Mainly the industries who consume more than 100 kilowatt, they can do a major part. Say if their roof can be easily converted into the solar power plant, but it should be a company with the storage and also the smart kind of meters. It should communicate with the normal system. And also as individuals, if you are capable and economical, better to have your roof converted to mini solar power generation system, if possible, with the backup storage. And also the smart meters and the good communication system is a must for and also artificial intelligence forecast the weather, cloud movement, rain, all this pattern. With the good communication, with good AI, and with control panel, like a system control, and like to call it control desk, whether it's local, whether it's a central one. These things should be bundled together to have a proper renewable system. And also the problem is, say the conventional fuel like fossil fuel, oil, LNG and everything, we can set up the plant anywhere and we can make use of this fuel. But the renewable resources are limited to the location, say the Mana Bay, and also maybe the southern coast or the land. Therefore, we have to move away from the load centers and harness, and if possible, do the storage, and then you must see how to utilize, whether if we have excess energy to have in the form of storage or in the form of hydrogen and so on. Therefore, these things are the problem. And also, I want to support Professor Anura Wijayapala's idea, the population control as well, because we have Sri Lanka. If you compare the emission-wise, I think we are pretty safe. In fact, we are supporting the other countries because our forest coverage and our emissions are much, much lower. If you talk about the 80-20 rule, the biggest countries like China, India, USA, and the Western countries, if they take quick action to reduce the carbon emission or the control the emission of the greenhouse gases, we will achieve most of the things. But we are like a catalyst. We are trying to demonstrate, even though we are a small country, we can do. Therefore, this is for our satisfaction, but the impact for the global emission is, I think, virtually nothing. Therefore, it is only for our satisfaction. We are talking about the emission, but even with a small system, we can contribute, but the percentage of the contribution will be much, much lesser. But we must persuade the big contributors like USA, China, India, and other biggest country to go for renewable or to reduce the greenhouse gases as set up by the international organization, and to meet the target by 2030 as well as 2050.
Thank you, Mr. Ranatunga. Recently, we saw there was a big interest, enthusiasm by people to go with the solar panels for the energy storage, sometimes off-grid systems and all. So most of the people, the question that they were raising was the costs are too high. And then the other question that they came up with is, can it be a life savior? Can it be a savior for us? Would like to know your opinion on this, Professor Anura, as well as Professor Asanka will talk about this. It's an interesting way to talk about, as the participants will also benefit a lot with that.
Shall I take first? Okay.
Yes, Professor.
And that renewables, one issue is they are intermittent and seasonal. Wind is seasonal. So even in our Manna Bay, wind is available for about 6 months, and it goes for an off season of about six months. So we must have in our backyard some other power plants during the off season. So that is one issue with wind. And solar, we know only a few hours, maybe 8-10 hours a day, and again intermittent due to cloud movements, basically. And panel costs have come down drastically. But if you want to make them firm power using storage is pretty expensive still. So if you add the storage cost to solar cost, it will be much, much bigger figure, and which will be not acceptable to our country. And you know that now my thinking is, as Mr. Ranatunga said, we are a very low emitting country, about 1 ton per person per year. Whereas many countries, even India, 1.7 million tons per year per person. And so China, maybe 7-8 million tons per person per year. So our total emissions are 20 million tons of carbon dioxide. Whereas the world total is, as Professor Ajit was showing, something around 50,000 million or 50 billion tons of carbon dioxide per year. So even if we reduce 20 million to 0, it is 50,000 minus 20. So you can see the impact we are making. So it is very small. And on the other hand, we are now going to be the poorest nation in South Asia very soon. Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, all are doing well compared to us. And now we are begging from Bangladesh to not to charge or extend the loan facility they have given without asking for repayments. And I read an article by Dr. Siembalapitiya in the island, the island, I believe. He is calling Sri Lanka has the second highest electricity tariff in Asia. Don't think it's South Asia, it is Asia. Second highest electricity tariff. I'm sure Mr. Vinura can say something that, that some of our garment industry and other industries have moved to either India or Bangladesh because of our expensive labor as well as expensive energy, especially electricity. And so you can see we are going down. We are going down. We can talk a lot, beautiful stories about all these things, but I think our future decisions should be made on renewables or whatever based on economic consideration for the next 10 years at least, until we come out of this these economic issues. Otherwise, we can do a lot of things, we can talk a lot, but finally we will be the beggar in the South Asia. We already are. We are begging from every neighboring country and from the entire world, IMF, and we are renegotiating loans. So I think it's high time all decisions, including renewable energy or whatever, for the short term, until we come out of this issue, we take decision based on economic recovery. And then because we are low emitter, we can tell any country that you can say we are already low emitter. So there is 20 million tons. So you want us to go down, or you want us to die and reduce that 20 million emissions. Therefore, renewable energy, solar power, wind power, all good. We are already doing well. We should continue them, but based on economic decisions until we come out of this economic issues the country is facing, especially the poor. I remember, I noticed, remember if you may have also already noticed in some part of the country, some people have killed their families and hanged themselves because they can't find food for the family. Remember how bad it is. I don't think in India it is happening. India, the food is pretty cheap compared to all other costs. And therefore people don't die like that. So this might be, go into a vicious circle, and then we will have no solutions. So we should be really ashamed of, you can see, we have got the free education and we are holding high posts and all that. And we talk about all these beautiful things, but finally the poorest of the poor have no solutions. Therefore, I think for the short term, next 10 years, 5 to 10 years, our economic, all our decisions should be based on the policy decisions, or our action decisions should be based on, the economic considerations, and then we can go for all these international commitments and other things. Otherwise, if we try to kill ourselves, just like what I said, the tipping point, we will go over the tipping point for the carbon emissions, and similarly, our country's economy will go beyond recovery, and all will suffer. And so in that context, I would say that renewable energy, we already are doing well, we should continue, but based on the economics. Thank you.
Exactly. Wherever we are, like, we should live first. That's the basic things that people should think of the way that we could go ahead and then achieve the stuff. But when we're thinking about the use of maybe the renewable energies, Professor Asanka, I think you can share your thoughts on this, because as Sustainable Energy Authority, there have been many projects going on, something like Suryabala Sangrame and all. What was the progress, or where this has taken us? What thoughts can you share with us on that matter?
Yeah, when you look at the programs that are conducted by the government and the Sustainable Energy Authority, CEB and LECO, so that in 2000, the recent one was the 2016 with Suryabala Sangrame, where the target was to have 200 megawatt of solar rooftop by 2020, which we have already achieved. So 2019 May, we achieved the 200 megawatt of solar rooftop, and the next target was the 1000 megawatt of solar the systems by 2025. So still we are progressing on that one. I'm not happy about how we are progressing, but I will put the discussion into some other dimension, so that whatever we say, so now when we say the renewable energy, we have to look at what will be there. As all of us, even Mr. Ranatunga, the Professor Anura mentioned, we have to look at the economy. So that we generally look at the levelized cost of energy of all these things, so that we are obviously nowadays we are talking about. So in terms of the energy, the renewables are much more economical compared to the traditional technology. No doubt about that. But we have to keep in mind, now we are struggling with the foreign exchange and the dollar crisis. Everybody is talking, but even for the renewable, now whether our country has taken significant the step to solve this problem. Now, even at the moment, we don't have any the supportive the production in country. Now, for example, all PV panels are imported. All the inverters are imported. And we have a certain amount of cabling, but all the other raw materials are imported from the other countries. So that even though it is we are getting our resource, so when you compare that the levelized cost, what we are talking about as a very low value, that will go as a foreign exchange to the other country. So still, so that problem will not solve. Even for look at we are talking about the wind. So that when you look at our contribution, country's contribution for the wind generation, other than the resource, the technology-wise and the equipment-wise, those things are very minimal. So that all the turbines and other equipment, monitoring devices, all are imported. So that there is no any the value addition. Okay, I'm not saying the zero value addition. Of course, there is a certain value addition, but in terms of the economic part, so that what we are doing again, so that in the coal or petroleum product, every day we are sending dollars to the other countries and importing the energy. But in the other renewable energy, now when you look at the solar and wind, what we do is we put the capital at the beginning, and then throughout the 20 years, 30 years time period, we are paying it for the other countries. So that because of that, so the whatever we said, as I said, my strong belief is so that the government and the public and the private part should take some the active role and do something. Otherwise, just saying, okay, we want to achieve 70% of the renewable energy target by 2030, while importing everything from the other countries will not solve the country's problem. So that we will go for the renewable energy, we will reduce our grid emission factor, but that will not enhance our economy. So that always look at that, we have to look at that aspect, where we need to have a sufficient production in country, so that all we have to produce it, and we have to, as the Professor Ajit mentioned, we have very good material. Raw materials are there, but they are in the raw material stage. So that where the government or any other parties have not taken significant action to make them as a commercial product. So that we are still doing the research, we are disseminating our knowledge, but the implementation, there is a strong lacking point in the implementation. So that in that terms, so that even though we are saying that, okay, we go for renewable energy, while importing all the raw material from the other countries, China or some other countries, and the sending the dollars to that country and generating the renewable energy or whatever, will not solve the country's problem. So that we have to look at that aspects and take the quick some kind of action to resolve that problem. Otherwise, just okay, achieving the 70% renewable by 2030 or net carbon zero by 2050 with this type of import of all the material will not solve the country's problem.
Thank you, Professor Asanka. I think this is open to talk about these issues that we are facing and the way forward that we could go ahead. I think Vinura has some more opinions to add in this regard, because with the pressures coming to the industry and how they are moving ahead with all the obstacles, and also I think we'll take a couple of minutes also to discuss on that. In the meantime, I would like to invite the participants to share your questions to the chat box, or else you can unmute your microphones and raise us the questions in the third phase after Vinura talks about their pressures and all what we could do. And we would like to talk about the opportunities available with the biomass energy generation also. We'll go to that. Before that, I'd like to have the opinion on Vinura on this also.
Yeah, I think so. Basically, when we take emissions, for us, we have what we refer to as scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. Scope 1 and 2 is essentially all the emissions that we are responsible for within the four walls of organization. While scope 3 actually refers to external emissions, for example, say from transport or maybe from our suppliers and or maybe our customers as well. So a challenge that we are facing is, despite us being, for example, say net zero, if our suppliers, our upstream suppliers are not essentially in alignment with our climate goals as well, the apparel value chain is of no use. So we are just a part of the overall value chain, and which is why we need to really not only think about ourselves, but also think about our suppliers and the entire value chain as well. And of course, I think the rest of the panelists also spoke about the economics, which is also a very important part. Unfortunately for us as well, I think suppliers don't really pay, or even our customers don't pay a premium to us based on our sustainability initiatives, as in they don't pay a premium just because we are sustainable. So we also have to be competitive. I think that is why regulation is also important, because we can't by ourselves push anybody to adopt sustainable business practices. But of course, we see, especially in Europe, there's a lot of regulation which I think will be sort of translated to America as well, which will definitely impact us. But some of the advantages that we have faced in terms of renewable energy, especially, is I think our operation cost has really reduced thanks to solar power. And also, you know, when we are adopting the net accounting or the net metering system, I think because our overall consumption is offsetted by the number of units, there is actually a cost benefit as well. So actually we are kind of immune to the tariff hike, because not all our facilities, but at least the new ones, because it's set off by the number of units. And if we take our country in general, I also do think that we have a lot of potential that we are untapped. I think there's another concept that I was reading about, what we refer to as the exclusive economic zone, which actually refers to the waters around Sri Lanka, which makes up more than 6 to 7 times our land mass. And there are international organizations that actually which provide green and blue bonds. So for example, if we spend time, if we have resources to say clean up our coral reefs, or it can be to restore our coral reefs, they can set that off with some sort of debt payment that we have. I'm not sure if IMF has anything like that, but of course there are definitely financial institutions that look into green bonds and blue bonds as well. So there's a lot of opportunity, but I think awareness is the most important part. Even for an organization, I think we try to do our best to communicate the importance of this to our employees. So I guess as a nation, that's the best, and I think that's why forums like this are very helpful.
Yes, thank you, Vinura. So with that, I would like to move to another direction where most of us would like to talk about, and there's a potential for us to move ahead with that. Also, I would like to know your opinion on that, the biomass energy generation. So would like to know your idea first, Professor Anura. Can we elaborate on it? Because some of the participants were also curious about how can biomass help us? We have a lot of waste generated. So can we use it in a proper manner? And the energy generation, can it like help us to move ahead? Can we just start up the talk with that? Excuse me, Professor Anura, you're muted.
So biomass has been our biggest primary energy source for a long time. So even if you look at 1980s, it may have been 60–70% of our total primary energy came from biomass. Even today, we get over 35% of our primary energy from biomass. So that is for sure, because for our cooking, our industrial heat requirements, and bakeries and all of them, they use a lot of biomass. And some of them are sustainably grown biomass. Some of them may be coming from uprooting of rubber plantations and other things. So whether we can call them sustainable or not is the issue. And if you consider the electricity generation, electricity generation from sustainably grown plantations. I saw in Professor Ajit's slides, he has estimated it to be 2000 megawatts potential. But one big issue I see is how to raise the sustainably grown biomass for power plants, which has not taken off really due to a variety of reasons. For example, as we introduced the 1997 standardized power purchase agreement, since then, maybe now mini hydros, we have about 400 megawatts of mini hydros coming under that agreement, but biomass less than 50 megawatt, I think, around that. All last say 25 years. The main issue is that how to have a continuous supply of biomass for those power plants and maintain the logistics. So which has not been very successful for the power generation in Sri Lanka. But on the other hand, at the University of Moratuwa, we have done some research where whether we can convert some of the fuel requirements of Moratuwa Wijayapala power plant to biomass. So we did the research and we published the results and we sent the proposal to CEB saying that at least convert 5% of your coal requirement by biomass, and we gave them a design also and some calculations and the economics of it, and where they can powder glyceria and add to the present coal feeding lines without making any changes to the mechanical parts of the system. So I think that is more viable. And for the records, I would like to say that in UK, maybe in other countries as well, but I saw the reports in publications from UK, they have converted 500 megawatt kind of coal power plants to run entirely on biomass. Entirely on biomass. You can go to the internet and search. So such things are possible. So this will have two impacts. One is our import costs on coal will go down. Secondly, we will have a market for sustainably grown biomass. Maybe a land will be an issue, but you know that intercropping, this area kind of plants in coconut plantations have been successfully done, which can be promoted because we have large acreage of say coconut lands, and which will have again more benefits by fertilizer wise, so that this area leaves can be used as fertilizer for them. Therefore, I see a bright future for biomass if Ceylon Electricity Board takes it up to introduce gradually at least 5% of coal to be replaced by sustainably grown biomass. In fact, I did the research with the engineer from Moratuwa power plant, and I think such things should be taken up by their research departments and try to do it in an economical way. Now, especially when they are going to be privatized, I'm sure these new owners of the Moratuwa power plant will look how to operate it more sustainably and also having less impact on our, say, imports and thereby our requirement for dollars to purchase coal. So that is an opening,
Exactly.
I think.
Yes, we have come to an interesting part of this. I think Mr. Ranatunga could give us his feedback on it and we could elaborate it on further on.
Yes, I would like to add Professor Wijayapala's idea. What some other countries do is when the consumption is high, you add maybe, if the say tariff is about 30 rupees on average, you add maybe 25 cents of that currency to do research on renewable, right? And that money is, say, in the case of the utilities operating in privatized basis, that kind of fund could be easily used to modify or do more research on the renewable addition, as Prof said. And also because as a utility, a government institution, we don't want to meddle with the existing power plants and we don't want to take
approach what we need to take as citizens of the country. We just have to be very self-responsible and always think that, we always play a part in the bigger picture as well. So I guess it's our part to increase their awareness, but at the same time, it's very uncertain. I think sustainability is a big topic. It's not something that you can understand within a day or two. But I think with hopefully with more and more awareness, people will understand that they too play, each and every individual of the country plays a role in our goal to achieve, whether it be net zero, whether it be tackling the issue of climate. So I think definitely, yes, all of us play a big role.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Each and every step would matter, Mr. Ranatunga. Before I make this cluster, I would like to have your final remarks on the, with regard to the energy-related matters that we are facing. Any tips? Any final say for our crowd?
Yes, you can start from your home. Go to the kitchen and open up the refrigerator and see how much unnecessary things are there. The 50% of the consumption is from the refrigerator. And also, if you are buying a new one, go for inverter, which will reduce the consumption by half. And also, think of saving energy. Say, one person saving 1 rupee is 22 million rupee a day. 1 rupee saving a day is 22 million, right? And therefore, don't think that, say, a drop of water leaking in the tap, you are neglected for about 1 year. That will be around about 4,000 liters per year. Therefore, we must think in that direction too. And also our pattern is we have enough things to eat, enough things to consume, enough things to wear. We are indulging ourselves and more than what we require. Those days, I think, when we were hunters, we had to go for 2-3 days to hunt and get that meal. But nowadays, you go to the supermarket, you buy whatever you want, and the things. Therefore, we must think of reducing our consumption also, not only in energy, but only in food and other consumption as well. As Prof. Wijayapala rightly said, to become the status of 2019, we have to wait until 10 years. Therefore, we may have to sacrifice many, many things. Therefore, we should think of saving, preserving energy, and not also energy. Every consumable item we must do to a minimum, and we must support to recover our economy as quick as possible. That is my final comment for the young generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's all about adaptability as well as understanding our roots, as well as going ahead with the minimalistic ideas. Professor Anura would like to have your ideas also, as we are now ready to wind up the panel discussion.
My final message is, although I don't say that we should try to reduce our emissions because we are already a low emitter, but still, we should think about conservation, especially in regard to, the imported items. For example, we import a lot of oil and spend a lot of oil. 25% of our electricity is generated by oil. Therefore, we should conserve electricity. We should conserve liquid petroleums for our transport. Therefore, our environmentalists and we, all of us, must make a bigger noise on conservation of energy and conservation of anything that is imported, conservation of anything into which energy is used for the production. For example, if we eat unfrozen meat, say chicken or fish or whatever, you are more energy efficient because to freeze every chicken, you need some kilowatt hours. So, and if you reuse your clothes rather than buying a new cloth, you are putting up some, saving some energy. And if you don't use electricity for inefficient equipment, you are saving electricity, and thereby we will be cutting off a lot of our imported fuel and coal, and thereby we will be more efficient, and our economy can recover better. So we have to multitude of things, multi-pronged approach to come out of this economic crisis. So one biggest place where we can play a big role is conservation of energy, conservation of electricity, conservation of food. See the amount of food wasted in Colombo. How much food is wasted every day from every parcel of rice whereas people are starving in remote areas. We eat half of the rice packet or whatever and throw the balance out. And whereas the farmers are very, thrifty, they even, get the last amount of paddy from the field into their bags. And then they bring when they bring the food to our table, we waste. And these are all wrong. If you look at a foreigner, they don't waste any food. They are systematic. I think you have been to many countries and see. I remember I went to a friend and stayed in Norway. So he says he give his food, the breakfast to his son. And if he doesn't completely eat it in the breakfast, it is put into the freezer, and in the heat, that will be his lunch for sure. Right? That is their way. They are rich people, but still they don't waste. So I think this conservation on all the things must be taken by the government and the institutions and individuals, and that will have a big impact on our country's economic recovery. I don't see the government taking a leading role or the government institution taking a leading role in this, whereas we should push and we should ourselves be examples, thereby we will have, on the other hand, a smaller carbon footprint, which is not the mandatory target at the moment, but the conservation of things so that, our economy can recover faster, and that will make a big contribution for the economic recovery. Thank you.
Thank you very much for our esteemed panelists for sharing their valuable thoughts on this regard, ladies and gentlemen. With that, I hope you have gained insightful information regarding sustainability and adoption of these applications into our lives, being responsible and being adaptable to the systems, and being more energy saver, and be someone who would be a responsible citizen. I hope this will open up your mind, and would like to thank Mr. Ranatunga, Professor Asanka, Rodrigo, Professor Anura Wijayapala, Mr. Vinura Jayewardene, for your valued contribution at today's panel discussion. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, may I make the conclusion of the panel discussion while handing it over to the MC of Sustainability Summit organized by Rotaract.